RWBY Volume 8, Episode 12, Creation. So this is an interesting episode. Once again, the Weiss pillow is really just for Winter because she had a cool moment in the 40-second fight that we got in this episode. I know that wasn't the point. The point, it was obviously called Creation. We got, our genie. I honestly didn't wear this shirt on purpose, and then I realized right before I did the review, it totally fits because I thought of Genie from Aladdin when they had Ambrosia show up, or Ambrosius, whatever his name is. So this episode is kind of down the middle for me because I'm there's stuff that I certainly enjoyed in the episode. The fact that this episode is a very clear example, story-wise at least, plot line. This is a very clear example of exactly what I've wanted this entire season, which they did a decent enough job. I'd say this season, I think, really holds up, even though I've still been kind of annoyed by some of the stuff that's happened. I say this season has held up as far as what I wanted for the season overall, which is every episode, at least seemingly, most of the episodes, something important happens. Even if it's oh, okay, that was a meh reveal, at least it's moving forward. Except for, we had a literal flashback episode where it was that's 7 years too late, for Cinder. But other than that, I feel every episode, things do move forward fast enough. So I was happy, even though I do wish we got a greater fight. And I feel we definitely will, because we're going to have whatever weird stuff. Somebody's going to die. It's do not fall off of these infinite chasm platforms. I'm okay, somebody's going to die here. We'll see what happens. Who knows? They might even trap Salem. That was the first thing I thought was they're going to somehow trap Salem there because they'll find a way to rip her wings off her just long enough to where she falls down, and then everybody's out and there's hey, we want you to make a pencil. And it's okay, here you go. And then it's bam, she's trapped forever. So I'm something's going to happen. Obviously something big is going to happen. So it'll be interesting. It has a lot of potential. The way the episode ends, I'm okay, I'm definitely excited. I think we only have 2 or 3 more episodes left. So I'm definitely excited for where we're going. And this episode did a good job doing that. It did a good job showing us the genie. It did a good job, making Penny a real girl. I don't have a Pinocchio shirt, so, there you go. Disney. But ultimately, there's still some stuff that this episode did a little weird, particularly in the beginning with the fight. Both of them, because technically speaking, there are 2 fights, except one of them just ends because Meryl says stay, and it is no struggle whatsoever for him in literally any way, shape, or form. And I've mentioned this before, they do a lot of weird stuff with people's powers, where it's they'll write really dumb things, I mentioned the Penny fight. He didn't use his power at all, until she started to fly, and I'm well, that's dumb. That makes no sense. You have basically a time-stopping ability. He also didn't really use it on, Weiss either. So it was just one of those weird things. It was okay, we have the whole Ironwood thing, and I was that's pretty cool. It's a decent little fight. They have Emerald, really utilizing her powers. She comes in as Penny, and it's oh, psych. She does a cool backflip, which she got a lot of momentum out of that kick, because she was literally I'm pretty sure she was standing straight up, and she just did a full backflip kick. I'm you gotta have some real power to just be already standing straight up, and then do a backflip kick like that. Even if you bent down, she literally launched herself backwards. I was that's superpowers. That's not just you can't just normally do a backflip and just kick somebody like that, and then you're she was really high off the ground. She was way up in there. I'm you'd have to be doing some legit gymnastics to do a kick like that. It just flat off the ground and just launch yourself that high up in the air, or you have to have the most amazing legs. So that was interesting. I don't know why that popped into my head, but I was wasn't she standing perfectly still, and then she did that kick and was 7 feet off the ground when she kicked them? At least, her feet at least at the height. She was insanely high off the ground. I was that's an insanely hard kick to fly that high up. But things keep going. So it's all right. Jean comes in, he does a little stuff. Oscar comes in, he does a little stuff. He gets pushed to the side. Then Ren comes in, he does a little stuff. He hooks him around the legs. He shoots a little bit. Then Nora comes in. We find we obviously knew, but that's when Ironwood is oh man, betrayal. He officially sees Winter helping Nora float in the air, which I thought was cool. I feel that's the first time we've ever actually seen that, and it's probably not, but I feel it's the first time we've actually seen someone specifically being held with the glyph above them. Because typically it seems everyone's holding on to the glyph, or it seems more you have to be holding it, even though we know that that's not the case because they've shown it through a lot of other things. But I feel they've never actually done it with another person, where the glyph is just above her and Nora's basically just stuck in midair because the glyph is just right above her. And I feel that's something that they haven't really done before. So I was okay, everybody comes in, they get their hits and stuff, and then it comes down to Oscar and Winter again. So they do the Manticore thing. I thought that was pretty cool. It was boom, he like a, grab the bull by the horns sort of deal. So he just grabs it, and they get launched off the mana core, and he just slams it down. Winter, just already prepared. She launches off. She's like, boom, here's some ice shards in your back. Is like, okay. Then Oscar comes in with the classic super speed Ozpin move, and he just pokes him a bunch with a stick. And so it's like, oh man, he's messed him up. And then Winter comes in with like the cool, I mean, obviously, my whole name being Invisiblekatana, you can see my katana's back there. It was a classic samurai swordsman move, and it was like the coolest thing she's ever done. And it also seemed to come out of nowhere, because I'm like that's a move. R.I.P. Adam, R.I.P. Adam. But if Adam did that, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. He literally has a shotgun for a blade, so like he can literally like shoot it out, and like the momentum and everything makes sense. But it was just like super flashy, and I was like, it has nothing to do with anything that she did, because all she did was a regular slash. It wasn't like she used a glyph. She wasn't going at hyper speeds. She didn't do anything special. She literally just ran next to him, and she was technically also already past him. And then they did like the crazy hyper stylized, like stars were flashing, and then like it flashed, and I think it was showing like all their different aura colors. So it was like Oscar was green, Ironwood I believe was blue, but I think during that scene I felt like it flashed gold, but his was blue like when it disappeared, and maybe it was Winter's that was gold. And I was like, visually, amazing scene. It was an amazing sequence, and it was just like, cool anime slash, and she cuts him, and he's just like, oh, he passes out. And like I said, super cool, but I was also like, that doesn't do anything with her, has anything to do with her powers. She literally just ran past him, and they made it hyper stylized, which they do, I guess, in most anime. But I was like, they literally just used this whole fight where she's using her powers left and right, and she technically just did a regular run past him, where he was about to punch Oscar, and she just ran past him really fast and then just like cut him. And I was like, she didn't, like I said, she didn't use a glyph. She wasn't going at like a hyper speed where it was like right, at the point of contact when he's just about to hit Oscar. She comes in with like an insane dash which we've seen before. Way back in Players and Pieces, which is like episode 8, I believe, of the first volume, when Weiss makes the line of glyphs that go up the cliff for RWBY, so that she can like drag the Nevermore up and like slice its head off. It was like nothing like that. It wasn't like she did anything special. She just ran past him, and he was like, oh snap, and then it was just super stylized, and it was like, boom, gotcha. And I was like, oh, okay. Like it was super cool. Like I said, visually it looked amazing. But as soon as I thought about it, I was like, she didn't incorporate her powers. It doesn't even make sense that she'd have this hyper stylized moment, because she literally just did a normal slash. It just didn't feel like it built up, and it was a weird, I feel like it's a nitpick, but it's not really, because I'm like, she literally just ran past him normal speed, and that's why it was just like, that was hyper stylized for something where she didn't even use a glyph to go faster. So it was a weird moment where I was like, I love how it looked visually, but then it was also like, that almost doesn't even make sense why it was so stylized. For just, technically speaking, it was literally just a normal slash. She just ran past him and cut him, and that was really it. And it wasn't like she really used her sword that much before. I guess this was technically like the first time they've ever even given her like a true sort of samurai moment, because typically speaking, like the Schnee family, they don't do that sort of sword fighting. It's more like fencing. So it's more like, rapier style, which she literally has one. That's why it has the guard like that. So it's definitely outside of her normal realm of sword techniques, but it looked cool. It was a samurai moment. I love samurai moments, so it was great. It just kind of didn't make any sense for her actual character, especially considering, like I said, she just ran past him normal speed, not even using a glyph or anything like that. But it was cool. It was a great way to end it. Great way to end, like I said, 30 to 40 seconds of fighting. And then the other half was, I can't even call it the other half. It was like, 2 scenes, and we technically saw maybe 3 or 4 hits. Like Crow and Robin were taking out some robots, and then of course AceOps comes in, and Meryl's just like, stay, and then Harriet's kind of looking over, and then that was the fight. That was pretty much it. Then they show him do that, and then they cut back to like the main fight, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then once that's over, they cut back to Robin and Crow. It's like, yeah, sorry guys, we didn't want to really fight anybody. We don't want to lose Atlas and stuff like that. And then that's it. And then I think they just left them frozen in time. And I guess Meryl was really unaffected. Like, he was having a full conversation, and everything was cool, and it was just like, okay, yeah, they're frozen, no big deal. Let's get out of here. And I'm like, he complains about, I guess, no, it doesn't make sense. I was going to say maybe they're not as strong, but that doesn't work. That doesn't make any sense. He's, stopped an entire crowd of people. So it seems unlimited. It's one of those classic plot things. Like, it seems unlimited until it's not. So I guess they were just frozen. They might still be frozen in time. Who the F knows? But he was like, stay. And then they started talking and everything. He was just like, okay, let's roll out. And they just kind of left them. Like, they don't get put in prison. with Ironwood, they're just frozen somewhere else. We don't really even know where they are. I guess technically they're still in the building somewhere else, wherever they were, and they kind of just leave them to their own, vices. Like Meryl kind of goes with them, and then Winter kind of sits with the heroes. And of course the reveal is like, oh, surprise, surprise, that the elevator scene, we knew that was them. It was them. So it was like, okay, like I said, cool action sequence. Some weird stuff was in there. Also, it was insanely short. Not much super cool stuff happened except for literally like the last two hits, which was Oscar doing the super speed thing, and then Winter doing like the samurai slash. So they end that. Ironwood gets arrested. Team RWBY takes Penny. They go in. It's like, all right, here's how this is gonna work. We get a quick little flashback. They kind of did it Boondock Saints style, just random throwback for people. They showed the thing, and then then they show the plan afterwards. So they go in. It's like, all right, here's what's gonna happen. When you get the Spirit of Creation, you're gonna meet the next genie. Which I thought this was super cool because I honestly, maybe I'm just dumb. I never actually considered the fact that every item could have a spirit within it, and they probably said that before, but I don't think it just ever registered. I was like, okay, specifically you have to ask a question, like Jin would do that for you. And then it's like, no, you have to ask, like every single item holds a spirit within it, and I just never considered that before. But I was super happy that they actually showed the spirit, because I was like, oh, I never thought of that. So like for me, it was new information. And then they actually did it, because I'm like, okay, they're gonna tease this, and then we're gonna have to wait another week for them to actually get the reveal. But no, things are just moving forward. It was like, look, we did our quick fight scene. Well, hopefully we'll have a better one in one of the next 2 or 3 episodes. But hey, here we go. New genie. He comes out. He's super ripped. He's like, check me out. I'm hot. I'm a genius. And then what do you guys want? So of course they're like, okay, let's separate Penny. We need to free her from this virus. So they kind of hit him with a loophole, because, and I had to read a comment on this to get like the full explanation, because I was personally confused as well, because I'm like, I don't really understand exactly what's happening here when they say, like, take everything that is Penny, like, take all the robot parts out and the virus, and it's like, well, that doesn't leave anything of Penny left except, like, the human soul element. And they're like, yeah. And so I was confused that whole time, because I'm like, I don't really get what he's saying. But basically, he had to make her human, because had they asked him to do that, once they asked for the portals, her body would have disappeared, which is why the robot body disappeared, because technically the loophole was, hey, we want you to create this thing, but you can't destroy. So her soul was somewhere, and it was just like, you have to do something with it. And they they're technically kind of just running on faith, like, well, we will specifically ask him to create a clone body that only houses her robot parts and the virus. So her soul, we're kind of leaving up to you. You do with that as you will. But remember, you are the creator. You cannot destroy. So that's why that happened, for anyone who is confused, much like I was. So I got that from a comment. So there you go. So that was the loophole. Like, he technically made that of his own volition. It was very Aladdin. It was like, we didn't ask you to get out of the cave. We just kind of played you a little. So that's pretty much what happened. So he ends up making her a human body pretty much automatically. I love the fact that he also made her, like, as soon as they did it when she's human, her bow is not robotic. Like, you could tell that it was like just a normal bow, and I just thought that was super funny, because I'm like, okay, when they showed both Pennies, I was like, why doesn't she have on, like, I said pants, but it was whatever they're called, leggings, I guess, or I guess technically they'd be thigh. I don't know, I don't wear them, but the things that she got, and I was like, oh, that makes sense, because she was an effing robot. Those are just robot parts. I was thinking, like, because just Penny being Penny, I forgot which parts were just robotic and which parts were like covering stuff up. Although I thought it was weird that she wouldn't have her gloves. I'm like, are her hands just pure metal? Like, I'm pretty sure she has like human looking hands already. She could have had the gloves, because it's not like he made her nude, because it has nothing to do with like the actual clothing. I'm like, the gloves would have went, but I think because they had to get rid of like the leg parts, because clearly those are robotic, like they have literally like green energy going through them. They're like, well, if we get rid of like the black, leggings or whatever, I guess it would be weird if she was just like spawned in with black gloves only. So I think that's why they got rid of the gloves, because they were like, let's just get rid of all of it, because it would just look super weird if we gave her the gloves, because technically it's just normal clothes like the rest of her outfit. They gave her the bow and everything. So the gloves, I think they were like, well, it matches so much with like the black legs that we have to get rid of both, even though obviously her hands aren't black and gloved, because they're robot hands. If she took the gloves off, they would have looked like human hands. So I think that's why they did that, because I'm like, the leg part makes sense, but technically the black gloves are just gloves like the rest of her clothing. So I think that's why they did that, because it would be like, well, if she spawns with black gloves on, it makes sense, but it would probably look even weirder to be like, why she got black gloves on? So I think that's why they did that, because technically it's just that little matching part with her hands and her legs, and they're like, let's just get rid of all of that. So who knows? Maybe she'll just not have that anymore. Maybe she'll just have the skirt and just like bare legs. Considering they're going to vacuo, that might work. That might be cool. That's another interesting thing. They of course go into the second step of their plan. It's like, all right, we're not done with you. I do love the fact that when they summoned him again, he was like, I'm free to create. Oh, it's you guys. And so I thought that was really cool, as it, like, he knew he was just out, but that's his whole spectacle, as if it was going to be somebody new. He had to act like it's this bombastic showing. I like the character. I thought it was pretty funny. So then they're like, all right, we need you to do this. So they have, of course, their ultimate plan is ultimate, because it's like, bam, we got schematics of Penny. Here's every piece you need to know. Boom, here is the whole schematics of everything. Like, here's where we are. Here's what we want. Here's where we go. So a buttload of portals open up. Don't fall. They open up like the door between doors. They look like the thing in Star Wars, which I won't get into that, but it's a thing that looks like that in Star Wars. That's very cool. So they do that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I was like, all right, people are going to go in one way, and then they're in this world between worlds, and then when they turn back around, even if they go through the same door, they'll just pop out and vacuo. So I was like, okay, that's an easy way for everyone to go in and get out, and that helps them, like, that was a part of the whole funneling thing. Like, how do we do it where you have, like, a buttload of people going in one direction, and then just them all popping out at the exact same time? It still doesn't technically solve the problem, by the way, because you can still easily have, when you have an entire city, you're still going to have that issue. So I don't know if there are technically multiple doors that open up also in vacuo, because I'm like, if they all go out and it's one door, that still doesn't really work. But maybe every single door that opened up in Atlas/Mantle, the exact same thing happens in vacuo. So they have, like, a million doors in both places until they all, lead out. So that could be how it's done. But I like the concept of it. And then, of course, they do the classic thing where it's like, hey, before I go, don't fall. Bad. It's like, all right, ominous warning out. I'm out too. And so that's how it ends. And then we get to see, like, hey, the city's about to fall. They cut off Jean. And then it's like, oh, man, what are we going to do? And so then, of course, the final shot of the whole episode is Cinder. And it's like, oh, man, villain stuff. We'll see. We'll see what she does. Somebody's going to die. It can't be... honestly, if Cinder fell, like, legit, if Cinder falls off the edge and that's how they kill her character, I might be okay with that, because that would be the funniest ending for such a useless character. Honestly, that would probably be one of the best bits of writing that they've done in the entire last couple of volumes. If all this time, and she was finally, like, kind of understanding who she was, and then she just died, I'd be like, you know what? She was so useless for so long that I'm okay, because I never saw the potential of her being better anyway. But they can't kill her off. Like, it's still stupid in its own right to just kill her off, but it would be so funny and almost ironic at this point that I'd almost appreciate it. I doubt that's what's going to happen, but somebody's got to go. I don't know who they could kill off. I don't know who I'd be okay with them killing. Like, anyone that I'd be okay with doesn't really matter anyway. Like, honestly, if they killed off Maria or Pietro or whatever, who have been invisible for, like, the past 2 months, like, they have not been in a single episode since Penny was on the thing. And I'm like, I know a lot of stuff has happened, but they've had more than enough time. Like, the thing was literally falling back down. That was kind of like the purpose of the episode, was like, I have to use, like, my boosters to get it up because it's naturally falling back down. So unless it's just taking them a super long time, they're just somewhere. I don't know what they're doing. Just old people sex. I don't know. They're just gone. So it's weird. Like, they're just out there somewhere. I guess we'll see. We have to see them, I would assume, in the finale at the very least, because they have just been invisible and non-existent. And I'm like, I know that thing was falling slowly, but it wasn't falling that slow, and it wasn't. I don't think it was dangerous enough to, like, kill them. I don't really recall, because it's been such a long time. But I was like, I think they should be down by now. They should be back and have some sort of vehicle that could get them there, or some sort of communication. Like, hey guys, we're up in this thing. It's falling down kind of slow. Can somebody come get us? Or, here's what's happening. Anything. And it's just been dead silence from them. So they should show up soon, and we'll see what they think about everything that has happened, because they've been absent from it all. So we shall see. But that'll be interesting. And we'll see what happens with Cinder. We'll see what happens with Salem coming back. If she does come back, like I said, my first thought was that's how they're going to seal her. But I don't know. Somebody's got to go. Somebody's got to go. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know if it's going to be one of the heroes. I don't know if it's going to be one of the villains. I assume it's going to be a hero. And it's really hard to say, like, who can they kill off that I'd be okay with them killing off? And that's just the funny thing. I don't know if I have a real answer to that, if I'm being totally honest. They can't kill Oscar. He's too good. I don't think they'll kill anyone from Team RWBY because they're them, you know. I feel like they make me hate the main characters just with the way they've just done this season. I'm like, man, I used to really love these characters, you know. Like Blake was one of my favorites, and yeah, not that I have anything against them. It's just that they don't actually do anything. I think that Cinder is her own thing, and then all of Team RWBY is on like almost the same plane. They're not completely useless like Cinder, but they're kind of on the same plane where I'm just like, I feel like they don't really do much, and then everything they do just works out. Like this episode, as of now, everything kind of worked out great. They had a 30-second fight. The other fight was like 5 seconds long, and everything is great. We got ultimate schematics, everything we need. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Everybody's off to Vacuo, which I'm excited for. I'm excited for a couple of different characters kind of transitioning and possibly bringing 2 very cool detective characters back, I hope. Even though we saw them like off in the desert or something. So who knows if they'll actually pop up in Vacuo again. But I'm excited. I'm excited for where they're headed, having a lot of the characters transition into what I assume will be the next stage of the series, and they'll kind of, I mean, considering Maria and Pietro have been totally non-existent for like the past 2 months, all these characters going to Vacuo, where everyone evacuates to, it's not going to affect the show because they can easily just be like, we don't want to write them, and then characters aren't there for like 2 months at a time. So I mean, they're literally in the same town. I don't think we'll have an issue of like overcrowding characters because they will write people out for eons, and you'll be like, what are they doing over there? And then they'll go back for one episode like, oh man, you've grown. So I don't think it'll affect the show that much because they'll just have more characters there. But that doesn't mean they'll really talk to them. They, you know, like they'll just be there. Like, yeah, they're over in the town, and it doesn't really matter. So I don't think it'll really affect next season where it's like, oh, they have all the characters transitioning, so now we have like, you know, 3 dozen main characters or whatever. They're still only going to focus on like the couple of people they care about because that's what they do already. Like, how many times have we seen Team Funky? You know, like it doesn't really matter if you have like a special role within the world. They'll just write you out, and it's like, if you don't do this or that, we won't see him anyway. So I don't think it'll overcrowd the series with all the people going into the show next season. And who knows? They might kill off a lot of people. Who knows what they're going to end up doing? And I like the fact that they only showed Cinder. We don't know what happened with Watts, and we don't know where Neo is either. So that kind of excites me. Because if they were all together, I'd be like, okay, they're all going to go in. It's going to be a fight. It's just going to be chaos on the inside. But since we only saw Cinder, and then the other 2 characters are split up, it means that they've already had a bit of a conversation. Because the last time we saw them, it was them as a trio. It was like Cinder, Neo showed up, Watts was there, and it's like, okay, I have the lamp, you want this, I want that. We didn't see any of that conversation. Now it's just, boom, Cinder's by herself, and we just have to wait and see what happens. So I am excited. Somebody's got to go. If nothing at all happens, when there's like no loss on the side of the heroes, it better be done super, super well. That's all I can say. Because if there's no loss whatsoever, it's just like, that's annoying and kind of boring. But we'll have to see. Who knows what's going to happen? I would love to know your thoughts on this episode, though. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. My freaking arm like snapped like crazy. Going forward, like I said, I know we have either 2 or 3 more episodes. I think it's only 2 because I think there's 14 for this volume. I would love to know your predictions. Is Salem going to come back in the finale? I think I've said that a million times. I think they'll just wait. Like, she might pop up at the end of the next episode, and then it's like, oh crap, now we got to deal with her too. So I think that's how it's going to go. Because they still have to deal with Cinder. They still have to deal with Neo. They still have to deal with Watts. They still have to deal with, technically, whatever they're going to end up doing. Because I feel like the stuff with Ironwood isn't really over. They got him arrested. They got Jacques arrested. I feel like there's still some stuff kind of left to, kind of play out there. So I'm curious what's going to happen. But I would love to know your predictions. And like I said, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.